So you may have heard about celiac disease or maybe even gluten issues, and you could be wondering, do I have celiac disease? Do I have issues with gluten? What is going on with my gut? So in this video today, we'll talk about exactly what is gluten, what is celiac disease, what is non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Man, that is a mouthful. How do I diagnose celiac disease? How do I treat celiac disease? And at the very end of the video, I will tell you, is celiac disease dangerous? Guys, let's talk about poop. Howdy y'all, Dr. Samir here, aka your poop guru, trying to give you the best tips and tricks to help out with your health. If you haven't already, don't forget to smash that like button, like, share, and subscribe. And if you haven't already, for goodness sake, sign up for my weekly newsletter where you can get great tips and tricks to help out with your health. Celiac disease, gluten sensitivity, gluten issues. Oh my goodness, there's been such a rise in the knowledge of celiac disease, gluten issues. I have tons and tons and tons of patients who ask me questions all the time about this disease, what is going on. Well, here's the truth of what you need to know about celiac disease, gluten, and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So what exactly is gluten? Well, this is a wheat product that's been around for a long time, since ages and ages ago, back even in the 1980s. My goodness, that far back, but even further than that, gluten's been around for a long time. Now, gluten is a family of proteins that's found in wheat, rye, barley, and of all the grains that are out there, wheat by far is the most commonest and has been around the longest. Now, there are two main proteins in gluten. One of is glutenin, and the second one's gliadin. Now, gliadin is the one protein that is responsible for all the havoc, all the drama, all the issues when it comes to both celiac disease and gluten sensitivity. So what happens is when flour mixes with water, the gluten proteins form a sticky network that stick together and don't want to come apart. And that gives the dough the elasticity, the yumminess, and the ability to rise whenever you're baking that dough. What we are finding is we've made changes in how we process things, how we make things, that we're actually adding more and more ingredients to these foods like wheat, barley, and rye, which can make it more difficult for people to digest them. But more importantly than that, we're seeing that some people actually have an actual allergy to gluten, leading to a lot of gut issues. So what exactly is celiac disease? What exactly is non-gluten sensitivity? Let's break it down. So celiac disease is an actual autoimmune disease in which your body attacks itself whenever it ingests gluten. Gluten acts as a molecule to wipe out all of these villi that are in your small intestine. They get cut off, you don't have them anymore, and because you don't have them, you have a lot of gut issues that can form from that. Your villi typically are used to absorb nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, and if you have celiac disease and you have this autoimmune reaction, you lose the ability for your villi to absorb, which can manifest in a lot of different issues. Gluten intolerance or non-gluten sensitivity, you have very similar symptoms, which we'll talk about, but you actually don't have the autoimmune component, meaning you actually don't lose those villi that are there. They're still there, but you have the inability to absorb products that have gluten in them, which can manifest in a lot of different symptoms. So what are those symptoms? Well, Captain Obvious, let's talk about them. There are typically GI symptoms and non-GI symptoms, and they can mimic between the two. So for both celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity, the GI symptoms include things like bloating, distension, feeling crappy, having a lot of nausea, diarrhea, feeling bloated, not feeling very good. These are symptoms very common with both celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. You can also have brain fog as well, maybe joint pain that's there. These are some of the symptoms that can occur from that. Now, there are some symptoms that are more specific for celiac disease and not specific for non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So for example, you may become anemic with celiac disease, meaning that your blood count is low because you have difficulty absorbing iron, not with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. You may have some liver inflammation with celiac disease, but not with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. You may have some vitamin deficiencies, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin A, and vitamin K with celiac disease, but not, you got it, with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And the reason you have some of these symptoms with celiac disease is because it's an autoimmune disease. Remember, you lose those villi, you can't absorb that, and that can manifest in a lot of gut issues and non-GI issues. But you typically do not have that with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And that's really an important difference when it comes to long-term treatment and long-term care, which we'll talk about at the very end of the video. So how exactly do we diagnose this? So once again, we have to talk about both different diseases. So for celiac disease, because it's an autoimmune disease, there are 2 tests that we can do, and you typically need both tests to confirm that you have this. Number 1, you have to do blood testing, and the best test for us to check is to check to see if you have antibodies against the gliadin protein. We check a TTG. Now, if this is elevated, there's a very good chance that you have celiac disease, but a word of caution, this has to be done on a gluten-rich diet. So if you're on a gluten-free diet, and you want to check to see if you have celiac disease, guess what? Yes, you have to eat gluten for about a week to 10 days, and that's going to be the best way for us to know if you have this based on this blood test. Because if you're on a gluten-free diet, this test will be falsely normal, and that doesn't do me any good, nor does it do you any good. Now, if we have somebody who has an elevated TTG based on the blood testing on a gluten-rich diet, we typically then want to do an upper endoscopy or an EGD, which is a very small camera. We take a look down the esophagus. We take biopsies of your small intestine. We look at it under a little microscope to see if those villi are there or if they're cut off and you don't have them anymore. Now, this is very different from non-celiac gluten sensitivity because guess what? There is no blood test that I can do to tell me that you have this. We have no idea in terms of diagnosis what is going to be the best option to diagnosis, except for the fact that if you tell me you feel crappy on gluten and you feel better off of it, and we checked you for celiac and it's normal, that is the only thing that we need to know to help diagnose that condition. But if you're asking me for a particular test for that, guess what? There is not one test that's going to tell me you have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Now that we talked about diagnosis, let's talk about treatment. Pop question, hot shot. How do you think that we treat celiac disease or non-gluten sensitivity? Come on, guys, what do you think? Yes! Thank you, Captain Obvious. Be on a gluten-free diet. Bing, 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 bing. That is the right answer to the question. But here's the issue I want you guys to know is that because celiac disease is an autoimmune disease, you have to eliminate all gluten. So not just gluten that you eat, but gluten that you maybe put on your hands like lotion, or gluten in pills, or maybe gluten in drinks, maybe in your hair conditioner or shampoo or whatever else you do with your hair. Gluten is in a lot of different items besides food. And if you actually have celiac disease, your body will react to that gluten even if you don't ingest it. So you have to be highly vigilant and making sure everything that's out there does not contain gluten. Very different from non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Whereas it's just whatever you eat can cause you gut issues, but if you happen to use gluten-rich lotion, if you happen to swim in a gluten sea, it's not going to be a big deal unless you actually swallow that water and it goes inside your GI tract. Very important difference between the two. So, in essence, who gives a flip about this? What does it even matter? Is this not a big deal? What there actually is. There are some long-term consequences and dangers that can occur with continual ingestion if you have celiac disease. So I mentioned a couple of different things. You have loss of vitamins, so you can have low in vitamin D, E, A, and K. You can become anemic as well. But not only that, there is a chance of developing lymphoma inside your small intestine. Continual ingestion of gluten in somebody who has celiac disease causes more and more damage inside your gut. And that damage over time can cause ulceration, inflammation, and over time that can be so severe that it can manifest as an actual lymphoma, a cancer inside your small intestine, which is very difficult to treat and almost is always fatal. Now, this is very different from gluten sensitivity, in which there really are no long-term consequences from this. You don't have loss of vitamins, you don't become anemic, and you certainly do not develop lymphoma. It can be very discomforting to have gut issues, but there's no long-term consequences from this. So the best thing that you need to do if you're worried if you have either one of these two conditions, come see one of us. We can help you to diagnose it, and more importantly, we can determine if you have celiac disease versus non-gluten sensitivity. So my question today for you guys, what questions do you have about gluten, celiac, gut issues, comment down below. I love to hear what you guys have to say. But thank you for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button, like, share, and subscribe. And if you haven't already, for goodness sake, subscribe to my weekly newsletter. You can get great tips and tricks from your poop guru. Guys, thank you for watching. Hope you guys have a happy and healthy day. Take care, everyone. Bye.